Good morning. Welcome. My name is Verena Flues. I'm part of the organizing team of this conference, and it's my pleasure to introduce you to the person who is guiding us through the day today. Shreya Gadepalli is the lead of the Southeast Asian program of ITDP, which is the Institute for Transport and Development Policy, a non-profit organization. She has been leading the program and advising dozens of cities in the region for the past 20 years on how to make transport equitable, sustainable, and enjoyable for all. And from her 20 years experience in the sector, she knows very well what it is like to be a woman and to be the only woman on the table. So please welcome your moderator, Shreya Gadepalli. Thanks.
So good morning. How are you all? It's great to see a room full of women leaders, all of you leaders in your own right who've been doing amazing work across the world. And I'm really excited about the sharing that we will have in this room. And do remember that this entire program is actually being live cast through various channels. It's on the SUTP, Verena, is that right? SUTP Facebook page. It's also on ITDP India page. So if you want to tell your folks, please let us know and we'll give you the IDs, the website IDs, and you could actually tell them and you could see they could see you speak and learn from whatever you're doing. So this program, I think it's a pretty amazing program, in the first of its kind in many senses, where we're talking about women mobilizing women. And I was just discussing with some panelists yesterday that this is not about just looking at how women travel or how women move, but it's also about how women are mobilizing other women, how you are making sure that you have a voice in how to shape mobility in a city, how the transport sector itself is shaped. And we have various kinds of panelists here. You have people who are from the political side of things, but they also have people who are actually working at the grassroots and making sure that change happens. And in some senses, taking from the famous Gettysburg speech, this conference is of the women, by the women, for the women. So thank you very much. And I'd like to start the very first session. And may I invite on the stage Dr. Tania Rödiger-Vorwerk. Please, ma'am. Dr. Vorwerk is the Deputy Director General of the Federal Ministry of Economic Development and Cooperation. I'd like also on the stage Ms. Mary Crass. May I have Ms. Mary Crass? Please take a seat. She's the head of International Relations and Summit at the International Transport Forum. We also have with us from the city of Leipzig, Dr. Gabriele Goldfuß. So thank you for hosting us here. Please. And finally, we have the Honorable Julie Ann Genter. She's the Minister for Women and also the Associate Minister for Transport and Health from New Zealand, all the way. Just give me a second. I'd like to first invite Dr. Vorwerk. Dr. Vorwerk has served in multiple positions in the German Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development. She's currently the Deputy Director General at the Directorate of Environment and Infrastructure. She has led bilateral development policy and cooperation with South Asia, crisis prevention and peace building, human resource development, and has served as Director, Strategy and Planning. Prior to her work in the ministry, she was also the deputy head of the Department of International Affairs and Protocol of the City of Bonn, and strongly involved with the change management of the United Nations settlement after the reunification. So, Dr. Vorwerk.
Good morning, and excuse for me walking a little bit strange because it's the first day in office. I had a surgery and I wanted to be here in Leipzig today. So, welcome to you all, and allow me to welcome some of our very special guests here, Julie-Ann Genter, Mary Crass from the ITF, and Mrs. Goldfuß from the Leipzig city, very important, and Robin Chase, founder of the SIPCAL. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first Women Mobilize Women conference. When I see all the experts here in this room from around the world, the conference lives up to its name. Today in this room, women will mobilize women. And it is only a short while ago that a powerful hashtag conquered the world. In the wake of the disgraced Hollywood film producer Harvey Weinstein's downfall, hashtag #MeToo was born. The hashtag #MeToo made a problem evident that has been existing for a very long time. And it has been ignored for a very long time. For a long time, women in all parts of the world felt that they could not talk about sexual harassment. They thought they would not be believed. They thought that talking about it would lead to many negative consequences for them, and it often some did. And I'm quite sure that many of us could talk about situations, what they remember, what happened to them, me included. For example, in Pakistan, over 70% of women experience harassment in public transport, and 50 say the perpetrator was another passenger. Less than 4% of victims asked for help. So much about numbers. But it's not about numbers. It's about living and living quality. Sexual harassment in the public transport is not a problem constrained to developing countries. In Germany, 1/3 of all women have made the same experience. The debate about the sexual harassment of women has led to an increased public attention for the restriction women face in their daily movements, and it has given momentum to long overdue debate in transport policy, planning, and operation. But there is a broader picture. Women are at the forefront of introducing smart mobility solutions and introducing a new mobility options. In many cities, and I've seen some of them, women are taking the lead in transport politics. Laura Ballesteros is one of the examples. She's here among us today, and I had the opportunity to visit her in Mexico City and to have a look at the public transport system in Mexico City and the plans they have about e-mobility. Entrepreneurs like Kimberly Tour from Liberia are here, and I had the honor to be part of the team of former President Kula, so we visited Liberia several times and we saw a lot about the situation there. They are building national economies, and leaders like Robin Chase are inspiring politicians and planners worldwide, with more than 20 high-level female speakers and presenters here in the room, ranging from ministers to entrepreneurs to local politicians to researchers. We can truly claim that women can fill each position in the transport sector and in society. At this conference, we want to explore these two dimensions. On the one hand, insecurity as well as inappropriate infrastructure and services that hamper the participation of women. And on the other hand, the very active role that women take in reshaping mobility worldwide. Ladies and gentlemen, mobility is a crucial part of all our lives. Mobility is the precondition to have access to goods, to services, to health, to work, education, or leisure. And mobility is also a key factor when it comes to rescuing our planet. Today, the transport sector is responsible for every 4th ton of energy-based CO2 emissions. That is 27% of all energy-based emissions harmful to our climate. Without action, an increase to 13.3 gigatons CO2 can be expected until 2050. If we want to compare this is an amount of CO2 one household would emit in 10.2 billion years. This is in a way an unimaginable amount that cannot be tackled by one country, not by 2 nations, and not by one continent. This is a challenge that all nations around the world must tackle together. Therefore, the German government has taken action. 54% of financial cooperation funds and 21% of the technical cooperation funds are reserved by sustainable urban development. We decided that in our government, in my ministry, the Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development. From 2011 to 2015, this equaled investment of 14 billion euros. With this investment, we support inter alia, our multi-stakeholder partnership, Transformative Urban Mobility initiative, TUMI. And with TUMI, we work together with a broad range of partners, stakeholders, including finance, like the KfW, the ADB, and the CAF, or think tanks like WRI, ITDP, and SLOCAT, and city networks like ICLAI, C40, and UN Habitat. Together, we have put the TUMI on 3 pillars. First pillar, investment. We mobilize finance to build and modernize urban mobility infrastructure. Second pillar, capacity building. We want to enable 1,500 urban change makers like you are here today to plan and implement modern mobility concepts. And the third pillar is about innovation. With the TUMI, we support innovative pilot activities in cities across the globe, and tomorrow we will learn about these initiatives, and I'm really looking forward to see what they bring to our knowledge. So underlying TUMI is the belief that we only transformative change can put us on a path to sustainable development worldwide, and that there is nothing more than transformation, than empowering women to do their part. We have more than 120 urban change makers here today in this room, fighting for change in transport with innovative, inspiring, and excellent ideas, and working together hand in hand to make a transport mobility around the world better, and better to provide sustainable transport solutions to improve people's lives, women and men equally, and not forget the kids and the unenabled. I'm therefore very happy to officially welcome you all to this WomenMobilizeWomen conference, 2018, the first time in Germany, but I would say first time worldwide. the very first in its kind, bringing together female transport experts from around the world. And let me say this shall only be the beginning, because when women plan transport, transport is planned for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vorwerk, for that really inspiring start to the conference. May I request Dr. Goldfuß from the city of Leipzig to come and welcome us all. Just a small little introduction before we start. Dr. Goldfuß is the Director General of the Department of International Cooperation in the city of Leipzig. She coordinates the European and international engagements of the city of Leipzig, as well as the development and caretaking of the city partnerships. She was lecturing for 7 years at the East Asiatic Institute of University of Leipzig prior to this. And in 2013, she obtained the Individual Performance Excellence Award as an acknowledgement of her exceptional contribution to the Confucius Institutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I was too fast. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's really great to see you all here in the White Hall, almost the White House of Leipzig. So be welcome. And I want to convey to you all the greetings of the Mayor of Leipzig, Mr. Burkhard Jung, who also is every year very, very excited to host the ITF, International Transport Forum, here in our city, and personally has really been involved in the organization of every single conference since it is taking place here in our city. Actually, one thing the mayor and us, Heidi, my colleague who's over there, Heidi, just wave your hand, Heidi, because she is really the woman who does it all as far as the city's involvement is concerned. We are very proud that this is actually happening every year in spring. Not only spring is such a lovely moment to be here in Leipzig and in Europe in general, but it is also making it's also possible not just to meet in enclosed meeting rooms, but also to go out. And every year we invite you to take part in a bicycle tour. Heidi is planning this for many months. She's a big cyclist herself, and the mayor is also taking part almost every year. So actually, I'd like to invite you all here to come and join us on this ride on Friday afternoon. This time the topic will be on urban green and on urban gardening. And I'm telling you this because Leipzig is really special for this community garden movement, because it was created in the around 1860s here in Leipzig. The German allotment garden movement, called the Shreya movement, was created here, and it is still, let's say, the mecca to all the gardeners, at least in Germany, and therefore we would like to take you to many of these green spots, also to Shreya's own gardens, and I'd like to see many of you on Friday afternoon. I'm here to represent the city of Leipzig, so I'd like to boast a little bit and to be proud of my city. So it is the cradle of the allotment garden movement. It is also the cradle of social democracy in Germany, of the German workers' movement. In 1863, the so-called Allgemeiner Deutscher Arbeiterverein, so the Workers' Association, was created by Ferdinand Lassalle here in our, at that time, highly industrialized city. It was always a center of music, the very center of printing, so almost every book printed in German language up until the Second World War was printed in our city here. and it is one of one of the oldest and most prestigious universities in the German-speaking world, and the oldest trade fair, the so-called Mother of Fairs. This is certainly one of the reasons why ITF picked Leipzig as almost permanent site for this wonderful conference, because if there's an experience in coming together and in trading and in exchanging goods and ideas, it's really Leipzig that you want to be in. But why am I boasting of all this? Because Leipzig has also a very special role to play in the women's world, and therefore I'm really happy that this very first Women Mobilize Women conference is taking place here. Why is it so? Because Leipzig is also the cradle of Germany's women's liberation movement. And in 1865, Luise Otto Peters, together with her colleagues Henriette Goldschmidt and Auguste Schmidt, convened the very first all-German women's assembly here in Leipzig, and thereafter founded the General German Women's Association. They focused mostly on educational issues, on culture, and on intellectual independence for the women, but they really did set an example for all the following women's movements in the German-speaking world. So I think there is something special in liaison of this conference today. I was so excited when I read about it in the program, and the history of Leipzig. So I hope that the spirit of this, I didn't know what the female form of founderess is, maybe of the historical women's movement may inspire us here during this conference. And if you come back next year, Heidi and I may organize a bicycle tour to the traces of our 4 famous female predecessors here in Leipzig. So be welcome, enjoy the city, and have get a lot of inspirations for your work from Leipzig and from one another during this conference. Thank you very much.
Thanks for that wonderful invitation, and we keep coming back here, and also to know about the precedents that Leipzig has set, especially in the women's movement. Thank you. May I request Mary Crass from the ITF to speak next. She's the head of international relations at the International Transport Forum, and prior to joining OECD, Ms. Crass worked as a private consultant focusing on transportation and environmental issues, including the UN Environment Programme and the European Commission and OECD as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning to you all. What a wonderful looking room. I mean, what a great way to start off what we hope is a fantastic week. But I'm just looking around and I'm looking at all these wonderful faces, a lot of women, which is super, but there are some men out there. And it's great to see the men. And I'm just looking around and we come from everywhere. This is the most diverse room that I've seen in a long time, and how heartening that is for us at the ITF, because this is what we're all about. We are a global institution. We aspire to be anyway, and the faces in this room really reflect that, and I really hope that you will continue your presence in Leipzig onward for the next 2.5 days and join us for the rest of the summit. It's really fantastic. You guys don't get this perspective, but we do. So good morning, and on behalf of the ITF, could I welcome you all to sunny Leipzig. Thank you, Dr. Goldfuß, for your opening words and for your warm welcome to ITF over the last 11 years, because this is the 11th edition of the International Transport Forum's annual summit. Can't believe it, but it's the case. And Leipzig has been our host and our home for the summit for all those 11 years, and it's been a wonderful partnership. And just because Dr. Goldfuß mentioned this, I would say that the bike tour on Friday really is fantastic, and Mayor Burkhard-Jung leads it. So if you're inspired by that, it's really a wonderful, wonderful tour. We're absolutely thrilled and delighted that GIZ, the TUMI, have joined us again this year. You all were with us last year as well and organized a fantastic pre-summit conference as well. And they've turned their sights to this particularly timely topic, particularly pertinent topic for our day, focusing on women, yes, and we would say on gender more widely. It is about women. We are about women, but it is about how gender interfaces with the transport sector more widely. And we in the ITF are trying to explore the parameters of gender in transport a little bit to contribute to this dialogue. I'll say a few quick words about that in just a minute. But this particularly interesting title, which is about women mobilizing women. And I think at the end of today, it would be wonderful if we could actually identify how women do mobilize women. It's more than just the women mobilizing the women more, I must say. It's also about how we mobilize each other, taking into consideration men and women. We are continuing the discussions on gender in transport throughout this week. We have a number of different events that hopefully you will have seen. We have a session at the ITF which is going to be focusing on safety and security of women in transport systems. That's going to be taking place this week. There are a number of side events, notably the FIA Foundation and CAF will be coming together and organizing a look at their work and how they are exploring the very complex ensemble of factors that determine how women do use transport systems and how we can improve that. We have a networking event that is sponsored by Bombardier, which is going to be taking place, a reception. Please refer to the ITF program for these times and the places. We hope you will all show up for that as well. So the discussion will continue, but what an appropriate way to kick it off here with GIZ and TUMI, and we're very grateful for this. The ITF sessions are going to be reflecting the growing ensemble of dialogue and reflection in the World Bank Some for All project, as I mentioned, within the FIA Foundation and CAF, UITP, GIZ, TUMI, the UN programs as well. All of us working to better understand the dynamics of gender in transport activity and how gender impacts through inclusion in transport economies and societies. This wider dialogue of inclusion is in fact the door through which the ITF is entering this dialogue on gender. And our countries are increasingly coming to us with questions about how inclusion, including with regard to gender and women in particular, how this fits into the whole ensemble and architecture of policies designed to improve sustainability in the sector. You can't have sustainability without inclusive societies. How do we get to inclusive societies without paying attention to actually the individuals that make up those societies, over half of which happen to be women? So we can't not take into consideration in this wider paradigm of sustainability that has taken on so many different definitions and forms and iterations, making policy development planning so complicated. But we have to come back to this question of inclusive societies, the social element of the sustainability tripod, and pay some attention to it in a very discrete and detailed way. In fact, inclusion is determined very poignantly by transport infrastructure, operations, activities, and how these do take into account women and how women interface with transport and travel activity. And so we are determined at the ITF to contribute to this dialogue, to be nourished from discussions like today, but also to feed the growing body of knowledge that is developing our understanding about how women are an important element and factor in, a determining factor in transport activity. One of the findings of some research that we've conducted in the ITF that we're going to be carrying further and that we hope will be useful, and it's been conducted largely by my colleague Wei Xuan, who is right here in the room today, and that is that gender is actually, in many circumstances, a stronger, more robust determinant of travel behavior than some of the more traditional indicators that are looked at in household surveys, such as income level, location, etc. So we're working with all of you in the room, actually, that are involved in this debate as well, to better understand that, because policymakers can't afford to ignore it if it is this level of determination in how travel behavior takes place. So this is our objective today, and for the week, and for these 4 or 5 different events that we have going forward in the ITF Forum. Again, I'm so grateful to GIZ and to me and to the initiative that you've taken to bring this wonderful, diverse group to Leipzig. Grateful again to Leipzig for hosting us, and we're delighted you're all here and look forward to having you with us for the rest of the week. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Crass. It's really nice to see that ITF this year is all about women, more or less, in some senses. You know, it's really, and the fact that we're starting this ITF with this pre-event is, you know, a great, great step in the right direction. So thank you for that. Finally, I'd like to call Ms. Genter. Ms. Genter is a New Zealand politician. She's presently the Minister for Women and also the Associate Minister for Transport and Health. It's great to have you here, and it's great to see that a country is being led by women, you know, your Prime Ministers and Prime Minister and yourself included. So thank you for coming here and to share your insights on how you're transforming the world of mobility from both inside and outside.
Thank you. Tana koutou, tana tatou katoa, na mihi whakanui kia koutou. This is a greeting in the first language of Aotearoa, New Zealand, Te Reo Māori. I'm giving greetings to all of you here, acknowledging the distinguished guests in the audience, the distinguished women who are sharing this stage with me, and the organizers of this fantastic conference. It is incredibly serendipitous, I find, as this is my first trip to the ITF in Leipzig. I am Associate Minister of Transport, and it is for that reason I have come along. But I also happen to be the Minister for Women in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So it's my job to advocate for women and girls in Aotearoa and around the world. Now, I'm the first Associate Minister or Minister of Transport in Aotearoa that has been a woman for over a decade. Now, I was first elected to New Zealand's Parliament in 2011, and I spent 2 terms as the Green Party spokesperson in opposition on transport, as well as several other things like health and finance. Transport has been a passion of mine for a very long time. It's been a primary focus for me in politics, as well as in my career before politics. And many politicians and journalists in New Zealand have found that quite surprising. They said, transport is seen by so many to be a dull and technical topic, not to mention traditionally dominated by men. So why would I, as a young woman politician, be so interested in the transport portfolio? And I'm sure I don't need to tell many of you at this conference and in the audience about why transport is so important. For me, it's not really about transport or mobility in and of itself. It's how transport and urban planning shapes my life and those in the community for better or worse. And the approach that we take to planning and transport infrastructure fundamentally shapes our communities and the places we live. We can either create lively, safe streets or car slums. We can have well-connected, healthy, and active communities, or we can have people stuck in traffic, separated by huge arterials that are full of fast-moving vehicles, slowly suffering from the health ills associated with inactivity. We can have towns and cities that help reduce climate pollution and prepare us for the increased storms and extreme weather events that are already set to happen. In fact, we must act now to reduce the reliance of transport on fossil fuels if we are to meet the Paris Agreement. Now, I grew up, I don't have a traditional Kiwi accent, for those of you who've never been to New Zealand. I actually grew up in Los Angeles, in Southern California, in a very car-dependent suburb. And without a driver's license, under the age of 16, I was quite isolated. And I wondered why it was that we never went anywhere where we saw people unless we went to the shopping mall. It wasn't until I was old enough to figure out the bus system, and it was a miracle that I was able to figure that out pre-internet, that I was able to have some measure of freedom and independence. And as a young adult, I was actually quite unhealthy. I was quite overweight. I always struggled with my fitness. I didn't have anything resembling an exercise routine because I found sport too high pressure. But when I was about 20, I went to study at Berkeley in Northern California, which is one of the most walking and cycling friendly communities in North America, well, certainly in California. And I discovered the joy of using a bicycle for transport. And later on, I went to live in France, where, again, it was my primary means of getting around. I saved money, I saved time, and I was fit for the first time in my life. But it's really just the joy of getting around on a bicycle that motivates me to keep doing it, even when I moved to Auckland, New Zealand, which is another famously car-dependent city. And it's not particularly kind to people on bicycles, although that's starting to change. So I could see that transport was fundamentally influencing how I experienced the city, and I want more people to be able to experience the freedom and joy of getting around on bicycle or being safe and comfortable on public transport, because I do believe that is incredibly liberating for people. And as I'm expecting my first child, I'll be the second minister in New Zealand to give birth in office, because our Prime Minister some of you may know our Prime Minister is expecting her first child about 7 weeks before me. It's an incredible coincidence. So I want my children to grow up in communities where they are able to safely walk and cycle to school or to be independent at a young age. Now, when I moved to New Zealand in 2006, I was working as a transportation and urban planning consultant. And the thing that strikes you when you work in this profession is women are an endangered species. And many of the systems that have been developed over the last half century or so, from the perspective of men, haven't really thought about how transport could serve women better. In New Zealand, this is certainly evident. We have the second highest car ownership rate in the OECD after the United States. Many of our cars are older, polluting, unsafe, and incredibly cheap. And yet, depending on a car for most of the trips is incredibly expensive and disempowering for low-income families, for those who are young or elderly and cannot drive, or those who are disabled. Our public transport services are very much focused on peak hour trips, which is not particularly helpful for women who are more likely to be making linked trips, to be going to the supermarket, taking the children to school, or traveling during the day, perhaps needing to go back and collect a child from school because they're unwell. More than twice as many men cycle to work in New Zealand compared to women. It's only 28% of cycle commuters are women currently, and that is quite simply because the infrastructure is not there to make it safe and comfortable for women to cycle. 30 years ago in Aotearoa, New Zealand, half of our children walked or cycled to school, and only a third were driven. But today those numbers have flipped. So parents, and again women, have to make another trip in the morning, adding to the morning car congestion. And we have the third highest rate of childhood obesity, which is linked to inactivity and other problems of any country in the world. So when we have a transport system that works like this, that hasn't had a diversity of views involved in designing it, we end up shutting people out of society, out of access to jobs, education, and a healthy social life. And the great news is that we know we can change this. So last September, New Zealand had an election. It was quite dramatic and unexpected. We elected our youngest female prime minister, and my party, the Green Party, became part of the government for the first time in the history of New Zealand. That's very good. Long may it continue. And I was quite fortunate to become Associate Minister of Transport, Minister for Women, and Associate Minister of Health, where I'm trying to link these portfolios together. How can the health system serve women's needs better? How can transport serve women's needs better? And how can our transport system serve the health needs of the population? In our first 7 months in office, we've begun to shift the focus in transport away from simply catering to vehicles to a focus on people, their needs, and their safety. We've made safety a top priority, and we have reallocated funding to allow for significant new investment in rapid transit, public transport services, safe new walking and cycling infrastructure, and road safety improvements. And I'm very conscious as a minister how much we depend on others to implement this vision. So it is not just politicians. I want to acknowledge all of you in the audience who are experts working in the field or advocates simply advocating for change. We do need that mobilization of the community to support politicians and those working in the industry to make the transformational changes. If we are going to achieve our goals in transport and urban development, we need more women in this profession. And I can think, there are many heroes, and I'm sure there are some here, but I can think of two very prominent people who have led rapid transformation of transport in urban form in major cities recently. One was the Commissioner of Transport in New York City for 5 years. The other was Toronto's Chief Planner for 5 years, both of them women, Janet Sadik-Khan and Jennifer Keesmaat. And I don't think that it's an accident in this male-dominated field that two of the most inspiring change agents have been women. I do believe that if men had to put up with the threat of harassment on public transport or violence when walking home at night, we would have officers on every train and floodlights down every dark, narrow street. If we want healthier, happier, more productive cities, we need people in this profession who can advocate for different experiences. And fundamentally, we need more diversity in transport and decision-making generally across the board. So I'm sure that all of you in this room are in a position to help make this change, and I thank you already for the change that you are making. I think that as women in these positions, we have a responsibility to support, energize, and mobilize other women, and to mentor young women in our workplace. And we need the men who are here as well to make room and encourage the women to step up to those leadership roles. So I'll leave you with a quote. This year is 125 years since New Zealand women organized, fought for, and won the right to vote. We were the first country in the world to have universal suffrage. And the fight for this universal suffrage for women was led by a woman named Kate Shepherd. And Kate Shepherd has a quote where she says, nothing, she believes, has done more for the liberation of women than the invention of the bicycle.
Thank you for that amazing and inspiring speech. And it's not just a speech, because you're actually there leading this from within. You're making that change from within. And we'd love to see, what New Zealand does, but we want more people like you in every country. We want each one of you sitting here. Just look at yourself. You've been that change agent. You've led, and often you've been the only person on that table. I know how that feels. But you've made that change happen, often going within, but also putting pressure from outside. So make this a point of celebration. Just look around. We are all here together making this happen. So thank you for that. We'll move to the next session. Again, a round of applause.